This is the Gauntlet Podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lowell. Hi, Lowell. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, sir.
So this is the first of our Gauntlet Hangouts Roundup episodes. We're going to be talking about some of the games we played in December, as well as looking ahead and highlighting some of the games that are coming up on our calendar in the weeks to come. For each of these episodes, we're going to be joined by a guest. And our guest for this month is game designer Fraser Simons. Hi, Fraser.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Fraser, listeners, in case you don't know, Fraser is the author of the Veil RPG, as well as its supplement Cascade, and a new project called Uncanny Echoes, which I think you're going to be talking about a little bit today, right?
Yeah, I think I'll be going on a little bit about it.
He is also the producer of our show Pocket Size Play, which is pretty great. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Let's just get right to it. Lowell, how was your December on Gauntlet Hangouts? What'd you play?
Outside of Gauntlet Hangouts, I did Blades in the Dark, Godbound, Fellowship, Changing PBTA, 13th Age, Action Cards. But this is an exciting month for me on Gauntlet Hangouts because I did 2 different tracks of Rollmaster with Slumbering Ursine Dunes. Simplified Rollmaster. I'm not going to go on about that because I know that Fear of a Black Dragon has covered or is covering the Ursine Dunes, which I adore, and I can't wait to hear what you said.
I think you're going to like it. Yeah, it'll be out by the time this comes out, but as of this recording, it's not out yet. And I think you'll like it. Spoiler alert, I love Slumbering Ursine Dunes. Oh, good. I heart it big time. So
I was afraid the beavers were going to be divisive, but they were the best thing at the table. So
I loved it. What else?
But the most interesting thing, I think, is that I picked up and tried out Modiphius's Star Trek Adventures, which uses their 2D20 system, which we played earlier in the year with Conan 2D20.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is a very heavily retooled version of that system. It was 3 sessions. They had a quick start that I used the pre-gens from, but I didn't use the adventure because I didn't dig it. But I bought their adventure collection, and I used the first one from that. Interesting thing was, because of the way Gauntlet works with the open table, we had kind of a different cast. We had one person in session 1 that didn't come back for the other sessions, and then we had a new person in session 2 that carried over, and then one of the players wasn't in session 3. But because of the sort of the episodic nature and the way we did it as a show, with, cliffhangers and stuff, it felt natural that the characters were changing around.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I could see, when I think about, I came up with The Next Generation, right? That was the one that I watched. I never watched the original series. I watched DS9 and The Next Generation. And particularly for The Next Generation, because it's episodic, there's a lot of space there to highlight certain characters, so there would always be kind of a focus character in those episodes. So that kind of makes sense. It would work in an open play context.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be a bad quarterly game to do, but I'll come back to that. So it's an interesting game. It has a lot of solid Star Trek material. The rules are clearly tuned smartly. We didn't do starship conflict, so that's a whole area I can't really address. Unlike you, sort of like you, I came up on original series watching the reruns of that and was excited when Next Generation started. And so those are my 2. And then I watched bits and pieces of the other bits. I don't think that the book did me a disservice. I didn't have to know all of the minutiae of Star Trek Enterprise or Voyager or anything like that. The game itself, smart little piecemeal character creation where you kind of choose your career path. It does feel like you're making a Federation officer. They've got a lot of talk about values. They've got a lot of options. They've got everything in there. So you've got all the pieces from Next Gen, which you probably would have to draw back if you wanted to do original series really fully. The game, the previous version I saw of this was very combat heavy. So it was nice to see in this that there were a lot of rules for social conflicts, trying to make them equivalent to other conflicts. They had rules for doing the kind of reverse the polarity, crazy science, make up a thing, and let's see if it works. If you can do this, the technobabble, we can figure out how to make the roll off of that.
I like that. Yeah. Well, actually if I can interrupt you real quickly.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, because what you just said reminded me, one of the things that we talked about on the favorite games episode was this idea of blurring the line between like more traditional styles of play and indie styles of play. I'm curious, like, what does Star Trek Adventures do, or does it do anything that kind of incorporates some of those more indie/story game type gaming instincts or impulses?
So that's really interesting, because when we played Conan, Adventuring Age, blah, 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 it is very crunchy. There's a lot of crunch to it. And I was seriously worried about how they would handle Star Trek. And so it's really weird when I first read this, I went, holy cow, somebody has played a lot of Fate, because they reduced what was an attributes and a ton of skill system down to 6 sort of areas of expertise and 6 areas of knowledge. That feels very much like approaches from Fate. You combine those 2 things to get a score. They have values for your characters that feel like your high concept and other aspects. And in fact, you use determination to activate those to get a reroll. But then the other big thing is that there's a lot of parts in the rules about, okay, well, you can make a quality, which you can then use. You put a quality on something, and then you can use it for an effect later, or excuses in the fiction. It's the aspect system from Fate done in there. And, I like Fate. I like the way it handles those things. So I was excited to see that, besides cutting down the skills, it takes an approach that players can really go, okay, I want to do this, and let's see how it rolls out. That it wants to give players more options rather than a kind of a really solidly tactical and everything has a guideline and there's, tables for levels of force and whatnot. Instead, we've got the ability to set the environment and do those things. And the game really leans into that. And it combines it with what we thought was the best part of the previous 2D20 system, is this idea of momentum, where when you roll, you get a certain number of successes. If you beat the number you needed.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
You get this momentum that can go into the group pool, or you can use it right away. It's a really interesting concept. I like it in principle, and I think it kind of fits into the idea of fate points. So there's a lot I dig about that. But I'm going to pause.
The hammer drop.
Yeah.
Yes.
They cut stuff down, but there are still a ton of options. Like there's momentum, which I love, a great idea. But then you've got like a dozen ways you can spend it in combat that are all distinct, and I have to show you a chart of them. And outside of combat, here are the 8 ways that you can use it. But you can also do these things, and you can also do this and that. And they're not symmetrical options. One of the things I appreciate about Fate is, and a lot of other story games, is it boils down that, okay, I know when I get a currency or an effect, it's fairly universal. It translates over. I don't need to know, the 8 degrees that this could go in. I can adjudicate easily from that. Instead, we've got this big table of things, and, it becomes kind of a slog. Mutant Year Zero uses the extra successes for currency, but it keeps it very simple. You can intuit what your extra successes do. Like, okay, I make a stealth roll, I get extra successes, I get to take more people, that kind of thing. Here, it's a little too granular.
Interesting.
It feels like they went, oh, I really like Fate, but I don't want to go all the way. I don't want to strip it down that far.
That's what I was going to ask. I worry that sometimes with these games that are, which we have called at various times, Tridendal, Trendy, whatever you want to call it, I feel like I worry that there might be like compromises going on both sides, Did you get any sense of that? Like, did you feel like there was any compromising going on?
I just feel like they, not say compromise, but that they couldn't push it all the way, that they knew they had an audience of players who had played 2D20 and they didn't want to alienate them. And they had to kind of stick to some of these crunchy bits. It does feel like they're caught between two masters there. It's the same feeling I got with Feng Shui 2, where they wanted to lighten it up. They wanted to trim things down, but they still had people who liked the old things, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Another thing they have is, and this is, I rarely used it because I hated to go to it. They have, you roll mostly, it's 2d20 to roll anything. But you've also got, if you want to roll damage, you've got these d6s. And these d6s have special sides, and they have effects, and they do damage, and they got little symbols on them. And you have to switch over to that. And in Roll20, you have to make a little table for it. And it just feels unnecessary. It's another step, and it feels like, oh yeah, we've had that in all the other 2d20 games, so we've got to keep it. And hey, look, you can buy these sweet dice. So that's a thing. And overall, here's the big critique to it. Any roll that you do requires a huge number of steps to get to what you're going to do. What are we going to do? Okay, well, how many stats? Which stats am I going to use? How many successes do I need? Okay. Do I have a focus with the task? Because that's going to change things. Do I have talents that affect it? Okay. Well, how many dice am I actually rolling? Do I need to spend momentum or determination? Okay. Let's get through all that. I finally get to roll. Now I've got to read the dice and see, because there are two different levels of reading on it. And maybe I rolled a 20, which means there's a complication. And then, okay, now I've got all these successes. I've got some momentum, and now I've got to figure out how to spend it. And, all of that, which would be okay if we were making like one roll per scene. But this is a game that asks everybody to make individual stealth rolls.
Okay.
And perception checks and that kind of thing. And that does not work. I mean, I tend to have my number of, like you, my number of rolls per session is much lower than other people's. And so there's more weight on that. But if I were doing it like as the game kind of intends, what a slog. That would be uncool.
Not much fiction gets done?
Well, I have to make the space for the fiction. And that problem is, in PBTA, you slow down and you look at the move, and that feels like a breath that you're kind of catching, and then you come back up. This feels like, okay, we got to stop the game. We got to calculate this out. Got to do this. And especially because we're running online, we've got to figure out the automation. Maybe at the table it'd be easier, but I think that's a problem. You'd have to retool what the game expects for when you roll. I think that would be crucial.
How much of that do you think would be ameliorated by like system mastery?
I think a little bit. I think system mastery in the sense that I know what I can jettison.
Indeed.
If I were running this regularly, I would be cutting things until I got to the key elements and the stuff I wanted at the table. And I think that'd be fine.
That was my next question. Can you do that? Like, does it lose anything if you like abstract some of this stuff?
I honestly don't think it would. I think it would be just as awesome.
Okay. That's cool.
Actually, it would be more awesome, quite frankly. But I also like streamlined stuff. If there's one other fault that the game may have is that it kind of feels generic Star Trek. And I think it's trying to be. It's trying to be all the Star Treks to all the people. Whereas like the earlier versions, FAS's Star Trek was very much in the time it came out when Star Trek, the movie #2 and Wrath of Khan were out. And it was very much in that property and embracing that. And Last Unicorn felt like very much the game of Star Trek Next Generation. And this one feels like, okay, we've got Star Trek, but it's not tied to the new series. It's not tied to the movies. It's sort of the generic idea of Star Trek, which is good, I think, to make it flexible, but it also maybe feels a little, God, I don't want to say soulless, but needs a little more heart maybe than it has.
Did you say The Last Unicorn?
No.
That's what you said.
Yeah. I shouldn't say it's Last Unicorn Games.
Oh, okay.
It shouldn't be The Last Unicorn. It's not the Peter Beagle novel.
What does the movie The Last Unicorn have to do with this? I'm so confused.
Now I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah. So I liked it, and I could see going back and running an episodic Star Trek game if I went through and trimmed things down. I think there's a lot of good parts and pieces. It's, I think, the best available Star Trek thing that's out there right now. It's the best of the Star Trek systems. And I think it's also a science fiction game that leans into what Star Trek's about, which I don't think like Impulse Drive and other generic, like, 1,000 Stars, they're not into that. Whereas I think this very much, tries, as PBTA does, to capture a certain feel, and it does that. I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes out for it.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. I think that'll be really great for our listeners to hear. Fraser, how was your December?
It was great. Actually, as I was making notes, I was like, oh, I played this many games. So I ran The Veil. I played Dungeon World with you. I did a lot of Uncanny Echo stuff. I played Murderous Ghosts, the new version, like the party version that
the party version,
yeah, that Vincent Baker released on Halloween, I think. So I think on Halloween, and I played Fallen Empires, which was really neat. Michael X ran it, and we were doing sort of a pretty deadly Wild Wild West with mythology thing going on. That was really cool.
Oh, neat.
I also played Weave. I played Kingdom Death for the first time, and I played Operators as well.
So a lot of games.
Yeah, I was like, oh. Especially for December, which is kind of like my light month.
It was a light month for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you want to highlight this month?
The thing I'm most excited about, I think, is Uncanny Echo. A lot of people in the community have been doing voodoo hacks, or just like playing a lot of voodoo.
We should say World of Dungeons. I don't know if that's accepted terminology yet.
Oh, sorry. Right.
Voodoo.
Yeah.
I like it though. I say woodoo, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe it's just a Canadian thing. I'll just get all the Canadians to say it, and then I will have not mispronounced the thing. But yeah, a lot of people are trying to adapt World of Dungeons and adapt other games for specific, more narrowed purposes. So I tried to do that with Powered by the Apocalypse games in general, just because I'm more familiar with that other than specifically Dungeon World. And I made it out of my comfort zone on purpose, because I love X-Files and I love Fringe, but I never play those games. Like, I don't think I've ever played a role-playing game that is in that genre, other than maybe one session of Delta Green.
You should probably back up and give us just a quick overview of what Uncanny Echoes is.
Oh, okay, sure.
Is it Echo or Echoes?
Uncanny Echo.
Echo, okay.
Yeah, Uncanny Echo is a serialized role-playing game that I'm designed to make a basically generic PBTA game to do a specific thing. And what it is making a emergent mystery with each issue. And it's a very trimmed down, rules light, pick up and play. You play like each issue for 3-hour one shot and you're done. But over the course of playing these issues, you make a meta narrative that becomes the actual story that you're playing. So the characters are interchangeable / the playbooks. What you're looking for is figuring out and sussing out this mystery throughout the long play.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty unique idea. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this, at least not in the PBTA space. This idea of serialized, short, like small package serialized PBTA play sets, basically, right?
No, that's great.
Yeah, that's the World of Dungeons gave me the idea for it, because a lot of people do these kind of adventure modules within that space and with like OSR products and stuff. So I thought, why not with PBTA now, since there's so much system mastery with it? So many people just look at principles, agenda, and just run the game. They don't even read the text sometimes, right? They're just ready to go. So I wanted to lean into that. And then also try to maybe corner the space a little bit on people that don't have much time to game, but know how to GM or MC Powered by the Apocalypse games really well. And then they can have a really low cognitive load experience, and then 6 months from now they'll have a story that they never would have figured they would have, and neither would I, because I'm designing in an emergent way for it each time as well. I'm playing each one, I record the episodes, I put it on a podcast format. I just launched a Patreon with the episodes going out, and then I design the next one. So even I don't know what's coming.
I do just listeners, so you know, I do developmental editing on Uncanny Echo, so I'm very familiar with it personally. But for listeners' benefit, I think it might be helpful to kind of give examples of the first two issues and how they kind of like link up, just so that people have a sense of like what the project is. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, yeah, for sure.
Or a better sense of like how it works.
Yeah. So the first issue is free. It's on drive-through. Pay what you want with a suggested price of free. And it's issue 0, The Heist. And what it is if you've ever seen The Town, it's like The Town, except that it takes a little bit of a twist at the like midway. You're these professional bank robbers. You're going in to get the bank. You're very good at what you do. The playbooks are geared towards you being super competent and good at doing this specific task. But along the way, uncanny things are happening, and it's sort of a way to get the players to fly fictional flags saying like, hey, this is the kind of weird that I'm into. And it all culminates into getting into the vault and discovering an actual uncanny event. And then issue 1 is Suburbia, where an echo of that event has happened. So whatever these players have contributed to the fiction in terms of what was in the vault and what the uncanny events are from the previous one, you'll echo that into this one, building the event as players and MC again, and then play it out as just regular people on a cul-de-sac. You've got like a nosy neighbor, a kid, the conspiracy theorist nut guy, and they're all in on this event and trying to discover something. And there is a clock a la Blades in the Dark type deal with you trying to figure out the truth, and something else, the machination, is trying to stop it. So each issue is going to be something like that. It'll have either an echo or it'll have an event, and you as players are going to tie this story together and figure out where it all goes.
And so like issue 2 would be, say, a different part of the city with a different echo or a different thing happening, right?
Yeah. And it'll jump around, sort of simulating episodes within a TV series like maybe X-Files, Fringe, that kind of thing, or jump cuts in a movie. So we might, after Suburbia, we might get another echo from that vault, or we might get a whole new event to figure out. And the people on the Patreon will help me figure it out. I'll put out some ideas and then they'll vote on them, and I'll win either way because it'll just be ideas that I like.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. You said you've been, I know you've been playing sessions with Gauntlet people and recording those. Like, how's the gameplay going? Like, are you happy with it?
Yeah, the first episode was really neat, and then Suburbia like blew my mind. Basically, it was amazing. I think it still has the uneven nature of coming into something that you don't know at the beginning. And then it gets really good when the clocks start to fill and the players start grokking it and stuff. It still has that like unbalanced starting procedure stuff that is, I don't think you can really get rid of it even with pick up and play stuff that I've done. But yeah, like what the players came up with, what the issue facilitated, I was digging it a lot, and I think people will enjoy it.
Awesome. Lowell, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, I like it. There's stuff like Black Mirror and these kinds of anthologies that are out now. And certainly I love the idea that we're taking some of that vibe and bringing it into the game space.
Yeah. I think it's really going to be neat because I hit on in the text that it can be sort of whatever your uncanny is. So I'm looking forward to people hearing or telling me about like, their Lovecraftian thing in the vault, or like somebody else had this like very other strong surrealism thing going on, or I'm just really excited to see what groups put together.
Or like an X-Files alien thing or something like that, right?
Yeah, you could totally see it going in all these different directions, all from this, inception point. So I'm excited to see what comes from it. Ours was like I didn't see it coming at all, just because the players were it's all player driven in the issue 0. So we had sort of like, they wanted like an indigenous theme going on because a couple of the players are from Australia. Mm-hmm. And it was close to Thanksgiving when we played the first one. So it kind of went that way, but it was like they did it in such a thoughtful, kind way that I think only Gauntleteers can do. And then the echo is, something that came from that you'll just have to
We don't want to spoil it, I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there is a podcast they can go listen to for it. So
yeah.
Awesome. We'll include all the links for this stuff on the website for this episode. But is there anything else you want to say about it?
I don't think so. Other than I'm just really excited about doing this kind of design work. I think the fact that I don't know where it's going is one of the main things that has me so keyed for it every month.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think it's a great project. So in December, I played a game called Truth or Daring, that lasers and feelings hack that emulates 1980s kids on bikes mysteries, very, very popular genre right now in role-playing games. That was pretty great. I played Dungeon World, 10 Hidden Keys. That was the name of the series. That was actually the conclusion of my We Hunt the Keepers campaign, which we talk about on the next episode of Discern Realities, episode 53, I think. I also played Fiasco, the Beast of Sucker Creek, which is a really great, it's my favorite playset on Fiasco. So I was excited to get that one to the table again. But the thing I'm going to talk about, piggybacking off of what Fraser just talked about in some sense, is prepare your bodies for this. Hyper Damage Dog Dudes of the Alamo. My God, Jason, what is that? Well, let me tell you. Hyper Damage Dog Dudes of the Alamo is a World of Dungeons hack that I am working on presently. And I would like to point out to listeners that I had this on my notes before I knew Fraser was talking about Uncanny Echo. So just throwing that out there. I was the first mover on the World of Dungeons hack thing. Hyper Damage Dog Dudes of the Alamo. It's a World of Dungeons hack that I hope is letting me do the game riffs, but with feelings. So it's riffs with feelings. That's the idea. I grew up playing riffs. I played a lot of riffs when I was a kid, right? And looking back on it, it's definitely like a system of its time, right? In terms of the mechanics. And
that is an understatement.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it really is. And also it is really, really bad and lazy when it comes to like cultural stereotypes and it's sort of general tone deafness, right? It's a product of the 90s. I cut it a lot of slack in that way. And I do have lots of fond memories of riffs, right? I'm one of those people who's caught between really loving riffs when I was a kid. And I know people like this, but in 2017, for different reasons, both mechanical and thematic, it's kind of like, well, I kind of don't want to play riffs as written, right? And so Hyper Damage, Dog Dudes of the Alamo, or I should say Hyper Damage. Hyper Damage is my riffs with feelings hack of Wodu. Specifically, Dog Dudes of the Alamo is kind of like a little playset within Hyper Damage, which allows you to play the dog pack character classes from the Riffs world, right? So just a little backstory for anybody who doesn't know. There's this terrible sort of like Nazi regime in the Riffs world that is very anti-magic, anti-supernatural creatures, anti-psionics, and they hunt those people down, right? They hunt down supernatural things to make a more pure society, right? And they use these psionic dog men, who are able to smell supernatural beings, to sort of like go into the cities, go into the, the seedy places of neighborhoods and hunt these supernatural beings down. And so Dog Dudes of the Alamo, I'm calling it, is the name is a reference to Dog Boys of Lone Star, because in the Rift setting, there's this city called Lone Star where they breed the Dog Boys. I have changed the names, including the name of Mega Damage to Hyper Damage, as a little bit of a joke, because Kevin Simbita from Palladium is notoriously litigious, right? So, just as a little sort of like nod to the sort of historical litigiousness of Palladium, I have very like blatantly changed the names, but like barely, right? Like they're like really, really like, I'm not doing much here in terms of hiding my intentions, right? I have no intention of selling this, so it's not a commercial thing. Anyway, Hyper Damage, what I want to do with it big picture is I want to use what I view as a sort of lazy stereotyping and general gonzo-ness of the Rift setting to tell a more emotionally impactful story. And Dog Dudes specifically is about exploring the concept of male bonding as well as toxic masculinity. So the characters you play, you can be either a dog dude, you can be the handler, who kind of like is the human who like manages the dog dudes. Or you can be an experimental dude who is like a non-dog animal mutant, who is kind of like an outsider from the pack. They hunt with them, but they're kind of like outsiders. And the mechanics are all set up, the various, incentivizers are all set up to encourage a really particular kind of play. There is action. There is fighting. I replicate two tiers of damage. Like I have my two different types of damage as in Rifts, right? It's handled a little differently from our World of Dungeons hack, but it's there. There's a nod to it. But more than anything, it's more about seeing these characters who all have to be male, sort of interact, like the different things that they engage in, that they are incentivized to engage in, the kind of play the players are incentivized to do is all about it's about showing vulnerability. It's about putting on like appearances for your superiors. It's about, being ashamed of your complex feelings, right? It's that kind of thing, right? So I'm using this sort of like frame of Riff dog boys to tell this story, right? Some mechanical differences with Wodu. I do have two damage types, normal and hyper. But we only care about the two different damage types whenever a quote killing blow is dealt, which is to say a blow that knocks you below 0, right? At that point we check and we compare the armor type with the damage type, normal or hyper, and then there's a little table you roll on to see how bad it was for you. There are end of session questions that are the only way to get XP. And these usually, by fulfilling these questions, by answering them affirmatively, they show your character living up to their character class, to their archetype, or otherwise doing what is expected of them. So, for example, for the dog dudes, one of the things is, did you show submissiveness to your handler, right? Did you show playful puppy-like affection with another member of the pack? Did you ignore it when a human treated you badly, right? Those are some of the questions for the dog dudes. The handler has questions like, did you secretly show tender affection to one of your dog dudes, right? That kind of thing. And so that's how you get experience, by doing what is kind of expected of you. But there is another little thing called Rifts, cleverly named Rifts. And the Rifts, these, on the other hand, show the characters sort of pushing back against the expectations that are had for them. So, for example, the dog dudes, one of the Rifts is you narrate a scene. You narrate a scene like when you witnessed a human behaving cruelly to someone. You narrate a scene showing you being kind or merciful or empathetic to a supernatural being who you're supposed to be hunting, right? That kind of thing. And all the Rifts kind of lead up to, there's like one final rift that you can choose that you, and sometimes may have to choose because of die rolls, that it retires your character. And when your character retires, it's usually, in the context of dog dudes, it's you kind of like leaving the order that you work for, right? Like kind of abandoning the mission, essentially. So that's the idea. It's these sort of like dueling, these like two dueling tensions. The Rifts, you can choose to take them whenever you want. And indeed, in my playtests, some of the players wanted to take them, even though they were pushing their character toward retirement, but they wanted to do it so badly they just did it. One of the end of session questions is also, did you mark a rift? And so that's an incentive to actually do a rift. You can also sometimes have to do rifts because of damage you take. Like one of the results on the killing blow is you might have to mark a rift. That's a little nod to Jason Morningstar's Night Witches, marks mechanic. I directly stole it, in fact. But yeah, so that's it. That's what hyper damage Dog Dudes of the Alamo is.
That sounds great.
So how split, you mentioned that they've kind of the focus between sort of the combat scenes and then the scenes back back home. Is it formally split like the Watch or Night Witches or Drama System, or is it more balanced?
I ran it that way.
Okay.
That's not in the text as of yet, but one of the things that I need to work on before I release the playtest materials is I want to write in more GM support. I know how to run the game because I wrote it, right? But there's no GM support currently in the text. But the way I was running it was kind of like that, Lowell. I mean, basically they'd be on a mission. They'd come back to their apartment. We'd talk about their apartment and we'd see them doing, like apartment things. And the next day they'd get their orders. We'd see their superiors acting like jerks. Then they go on a mission. Then they come back to the apartment. It was kind of that TikTok. And in fact, the way the system is set up currently, you're only going to get through that cycle like 3 or 4 times before the characters retire, right? These are like real, these characters burn up really quickly, like on purpose, right? It's meant to be like a really tight, focused, experience, like a very specific kind of experience, so far anyway. But yeah, so to answer your question, that's not in the text yet. That is how I ran it. It's actually not a bad idea. At the very least, I'll probably like say in the GM support, like consider scenes like this, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell when I worked and managed the game store, we could kind of break down the people who would come in, and Riffs always sold. And it always sold to a certain class of young white adolescent male. But what always amused me is there were a certain group of like slightly older gamers who would play Torg, and they would look down their nose at Riffs, and I'm like, it's the same crazy gonzo BS game, but you've got some more formal mechanics and better layout. So
and the Cyber Pope. So
yeah, the Cyber
Papacy.
What is this Cyber Pope?
That's a character in Torg.
It's a fractured worlds, and one of them has the cyber papacy.
Oh gosh,
transgressive.
Exactly
oh, very. Yeah, yeah. I'm really into this idea though, like this whole taking a trimmed down system to put in a framework to make it completely different with what like you and Kyle and a couple other people are doing with Whoa Dude was really the catalyst and inspiration for my idea as well, because I'm not super steeped in fantasy, but I wanted to do something as exciting and as what you all were excited about. So this is really cool. I think all the things that you've put in it really drive to what you're going for, and I was actually a little sad that I didn't get into the sessions, but I did talk to people that played it, and they assured me that I should be sad that I didn't get it. So
the playtest went really well. I mean, there's a couple things I'm not super happy with that I'll change, but overall, I was pretty happy with it. I mean, I got the experience that I wanted out of it. I got those emotional beats, and there were some really occasionally intense and often very, sweet, even emotional scenes. And a lot of like emotional scenes filled with like yearning and anguish, surprisingly. I have it set up that way. Like you're going to get that kind of play out of it. But also, we were also hunting supernatural creatures and getting into fights and shooting laser pistols, right? I mean, like all of that was going on too. So in that sense, it really hit my personal goals of like, I have a soft spot in my heart for riffs, right? Mm-hmm. But I am a creature of 2017 who does not like a lot of certain aspects about riffs. And so, hyper damage is my answer to that. As far as like, looking ahead with this hyper damage idea, I want to build in the GM support, for dog dudes, and then, tweak and fix a couple things based off the playtest, and then kind of put the text out there for folks. I'm hoping to have that done by say mid-February-ish. And then I'm already looking at future play sets. So I'm thinking about doing one called Vampiros Mexicanos, which will deal with, issues of immigration. That's my hope, if that one comes off the way I want it to. Also one that deals with, the juicer character class and drug addiction. I think that could be really fun too.
Ooh, neat.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you're sort of like using a rules light framework that most of these, the people I've played Rifts before and the people I've played with are very much as Lowell describes them. And
lots of sick burns on the Rifts community here.
well, just from my personal experience, and I only went one time and then didn't go back. But I really like this idea of using this system to subvert it while invoking a thing that you really love, and also doing a commentary on these different issues and having people, like, be able to go into these topics and expect both, touching on something deep, but, getting to shoot the laser pistols, as you say.
Yeah, no, I think I do believe that my love of Rifts as a setting comes through. Mm-hmm. Like, it is very much like there's a part of me that really loves Rifts, and that comes through in the text, I think, pretty strongly. So I think people who have that same sort of like nostalgic affection for Rifts would also like this. So.
Yeah. There are a lot of people in the community who that's one of their come to games. They were raised in it.
I know Ollie loves it. Ollie Jeffrey, he loves Rifts.
And I think that's fair. It was a game that had a lot of open imaginative space for people, and that gave them the yearning and the desire to play games that they could do that stuff with.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I find it so interesting, because I bet you, if I had played Rifts with other people, then I would have had a different experience. Just like I'm a little bit turned off of D&D because I went to D&D encounters and had a bad experience with it, right? But if somebody else had played it and ran it for me, like my brother had done it first or something, I bet you I'd love D&D right now. So taking that and subverting it and invoking it at the same time, I'm super into it.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't have anything else to say about it. Let's go look ahead to January a little bit. All right. So we're going to take a minute to talk about some of the games that are on the Gauntlet Hangouts calendar that we are each excited about, either because we're in them, we're playing in them, or because we're excited to see them on the calendar for whatever reason. Lowell, what are you looking at right now on the calendar?
It's hard because January is amazing for the kinds of different games.
Oh my God, it's packed. There's like 100 games on there or something. It's crazy.
And so many different games that are on there. But the one I have picked is really near and dear to my heart. Gerwyn Walters is running Worldwide Wrestling, Gage Valley Wrestling. For me, the more Worldwide Wrestling that we have, the better. Gerwyn, I met when he came and played in Edwin Tomlinson's. I played with him there one session.
Oh, yeah.
And then and he had kind of come to the Gauntlet by watching those wrestling videos that we had done. And then he played in the most recent series of Worldwide Wrestling, and he was great. And he really loves wrestling, but he loves the game as well. He loves all the backstory, and he has an appreciation for it. And he's building on the mythos that we've done with Gauntlet League Wrestling. So I just think it's really cool, and I'm very excited to see him doing that.
Awesome.
Is it the mythos of what was Jason's character? The strange baby character or something? Didn't you have like a weird...
I can't remember his name anymore. What was it?
Oh, no.
Oh, geez. Bleakwood.
Jeffrey Bleakwood. Yeah, Jeffrey Bleakwood. That's right.
Who became general manager and became kind of the behind-the-scenes villain in the second series.
Yeah, I know the Bleakwood family, like, it became a whole thing after I was not playing it anymore, but that's awesome.
Very cool.
Fraser, what are you looking forward to on the calendar?
I'm looking forward to Mutant Year Zero by Lowell. I'm playing it with Kyle, and we're both excited about it because Kyle has had the core book for a while and has wanted to play it. And I got Mechatron, I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of they had me right away, right? Because they were like, Cyberpunk in Mutant Year Zero. And I was like, okay.
Those are words I love.
Yeah, exactly, right? Might as well just throw money at people. But I played Coriolis with Lowell, loved the system, and I have heard Lowell talk about Mutant Year Zero a few times. And so I'm really excited to jump into that. But yeah, the calendar is packed. I'm playing 5 games a week with the Gauntlet. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Honorable mention to Michael X's Sea of Stars game, which, spoilers, Mike, I'm going to try to make it Jupiter's ascending as fuck.
Woo-hoo.
So
Jupiter Ascending.
The best movie.
The game that I have on the calendar that I think looks pretty great is Swords Without Master Echoes. Echoes is the name of the series. It's being run by Pat Perkins. I think this is great because, first of all, Pat is a fantastic player. I've had him in a number of my games, and, this is... I take the craft of like GMing and also being a player. Like I take those like super seriously. Like I think they're things that you can get better at and you can be good at. And I think that's okay. And Pat is one of those people who has like role playing game it factor. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, there's a few other people I can think of just off the top of my head. Like Jason Cox is one of those people, right? Like you just get in a game with them and they just know how to do characterization on the fly. They know how to just RP, Yeah. And so because of that, like I'm super excited that Pat is running Swords Without Master, a game that I know he's very, very fond of. And I'm just generally excited to see more Swords Without Master on the calendar. It's a game that I personally love, but I have not played it since moving to kind of exclusively to Gauntlet Hangouts. And it's really great because it's actually really perfect for the way that we organize games, because it's kind of episodic in nature. Character advancement is not really something that's emphasized. And so it kind of is great for Gauntlet Hangouts, open table play. So yeah, Swords Without Master Echoes is going to be pretty great. All right, let's go to Giving Me Life. Hey everyone, Jason here. I want to tell you about Codex. Codex is the Gauntlet's monthly RPG fanzine. It features original story games and LARPs, hacks and supplements for existing games, and loads of original artwork. You can get access to Codex by making a $4 or higher pledge to the Gauntlet Patreon. The issue available for January 2018 patrons is called Codex Lies, and it's all about deception. It features 5 ruinous artifacts, a supplement for Dungeon World, Liars and Bastards All, an original story game about fantasy con artists, HGMO Sherlock, a Baker Street reskin of the popular game Hot Guys Making Out, Lies of the Child Kingdom, an OSR adventure and winner of our recent writing contest, and 36 Scoundrels, a miscellany of scum and villainy. Your $4 pledge in January not only gets you a PDF copy of Codex Lies, but your name will also be included in the back of future issues of Codex, along with your special Keeper of the Gauntlet title, so long as your pledge is active. Support everything we do in the Gauntlet, including this podcast, and get access to Codex Lies by going to patreon.com/gauntlet. It's Giving Me Life. I haven't said that in a long time.
You haven't.
Oh, man. I'll go first. So I have been back home lately for the past, as of this recording, the past week or so, and just kind of like chilling with my family and kind of reconnecting with my family, especially after the Trumpocalypse election, which really kind of, for different reasons, put a real damper on my relationship with some of my family because it was just a really trying time for us, as a family. But, I came back for Christmas and I'm choosing to hang out here for a little while, and it's just been great. It's just been great kind of putting a lot of that stuff behind us and kind of just rediscovering why we all originally liked each other, but pre-Trump, right? So that's pretty great. It's giving me life. Lowell, what's giving you life?
I watched the first season of an anime called Sword Art Online, and then it got icky. And I'd kind of liked the show, and then it got really icky at the end. It's part of this whole set of animes that have the concept of, people are in an MMO and they get trapped there. So I started watching another series called Log Horizon, which is very much the same premise, but it's really to my taste, because it's about these people that are stuck there and they have to figure out, okay, well, let's deal with the practical realities of life. Okay, food tastes bland here. How do we deal with that? How do we fix that? And the NPCs are evolving and they're changing. How do we deal with that? And it's an anime about political and economic manipulation.
Oh boy, that's salient.
They want to clean up the city, right? These characters want to clean up the city, so they retool the economy. Literally, that's their solution to the problem and they do these scenes of action, but they're like councils and they're having political arguments. And I'm like, my thumbs are up. Sherry and I just love it because it's kind of big scale and things progressing. And there's all kinds of interesting stuff. It takes the assumptions of the setting and it really interrogates them and plays with them. Like a lot of anime, it does have some weaknesses in terms of its female characters. There aren't a lot of great, strong female characters in there. There's some interesting ones, but I wish there were stronger, more central ones. But otherwise, I'm about a dozen sessions in. Out of 2 seasons, it's about 50 episodes. I hope to God it doesn't get icky. But I'm loving it right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was too bad about Sword Art Online for sure. That took
when you guys say icky,
turn.
just become a big like just boobs everywhere or what? Like what was that?
No,
creepy,
like sex object, prisoning, rapey kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've heard that about anime. I actually don't watch anime at all. I don't know anything about anime, but I've heard that about it though. It's too bad.
Some stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Fraser, what's giving you life?
Other than Uncanny Echo, which I won't talk about more, I'm just finishing up Cascade. We sent out the proofs to backers, and that means that I get to go and start doing the 3rd book, Inheritance, which is going to be very exciting. I've already been planning it, and so yeah, I'm keeping my fire stoked with apparently plenty of design work.
Indeed. Awesome. Well, listeners, that's our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, we can be found on G+. Just go to the community section of G+, and search for The Gauntlet. You will find us there. We have a new website, a retooled website, Gauntlet-RPG.com. Go check that out. Hey, go check out the community resources page on Gauntlet-RPG.com. I've been adding little things to it. There's a link to our Play Aids folder, which I know a lot of people really love. Lowell recently did a GMing Q&A video, which is pretty dope. And that video can be found on that page as well. Go check that part of the website out. We have a Twitter. It's at Gauntlet RPG, and we're on Patreon at patreon.com/gauntlet. Lowell and Fraser, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And listeners, thanks for checking us out. Take care.